Good morning, everyone, and welcome to NINGAS, the NTC Research Congress 2020. We hope that this Research Congress will be a meaningful learning experience and a productive sharing of best practices in education as our way of celebrating the 92nd foundation anniversary of the National Teachers College and the World Teachers Day. We invite you to share your insights using the Facebook chat panel. Let us listen to the keynote message of our Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Edison A. Fermin. Good morning, sir.
Reimagining the future. I don't want to give a very long keynote because I am excited to hear about the evidence-based findings of our colleagues and to listen to how our current students or our recently graduated students are able to see the various realities that teachers as professionals and researchers should become more mindful of, especially at the time of crises and crossroads in the history of education worldwide. Has rapidly changed. Right now, together, we are dealing with a variety of tensions that define the kind of environment that we are dealing with. In addition, we're looking also at the level of emotionality that is attached to every change caused by these tensions. And it is but important that we are able to examine how these emotions play a great role in defining the kind of engagement that we have as teachers. But when we are capable of balancing our points of view about these tensions and emotions, we are given a huge opportunity to define new alternatives for making education work. But we also want that these alternatives are deeply rooted in an appreciation of the various cultures of teaching and learning that are found in every school. Because by becoming sensitive to those cultures and those orientations, we can drive individual and collective happiness in the things that we're trying to investigate and learn from. But you can only do so much if a lot of intuitiveness is present. And that means you and I have to notice constantly the changes that are happening around us. And from there, we can form the basis of questions of professional inquiry that can drive improvements in practice. And remember that as soon as we're able to improve practice, we add to the equation of the nobleness of the character of the teaching profession. And take note, every act of nobleness enkindles further greatness in the greater human experience out there. But you see, much as you would want to be hopeful that this is how we should regard teaching nowadays, we must also be mindful that tensions can only be understood better if we are capable of linking diverse perspectives, especially those perspectives that talk about evidence as the primary basis of debates and discussions. And while we can be heavily emotional about our points of view, we have to make it a point that we must end up exploring real issues that impact our sector, most especially our learners and their communities, who are in constant search of sensible choices in managing teaching and learning, especially at this difficult time. But in so doing, Tanglao is actually encouraging everyone to rediscover a lot of connections between and among learners, teachers, families, and other stakeholders, because those connections feed into our desire to nurture positive dispositions at this time of crisis. And as I said earlier, those positive dispositions should also enable us to increase our capacity to notice that the changes happening around us are not entirely negative. There is a silver lining to every amount of challenge, which should lead us or prompt us towards looking for new models of understanding how this sector is going to change further. And in so doing, we can generate empowering philosophies from the very evidence that we have found out. At the end of the exercise of research, it is important that we look at this as an addition to how we regard ourselves as teachers. Remember that in the purview of Parker J. Palmer, a postmodern educational philosopher, he said that when we address openly and honestly our issues in the sector, alone or together, we can serve our students more faithfully, enhance our own well-being, make common cause with colleagues, and help education bring more light, panglaw, and life, buhay, to the world. Ipinagpapasalamat ko ang pamumuno ni Professor Ronaldin Federizo sa pagtataguyod ng NINGAS upang lalo pang paigtingin, papagningasin at pagliyabin ang tanglaw ng karunungan na mayroon ang National Teachers College. May this day be a contribution, a very meaningful contribution to the celebration of World Teachers Day. Congratulations ahead of time are given to the winners of the Adaptive and Resilient Education Awards, whom we will be announcing later, and may your tribe increase to our students who will be sharing their insights into research today. Gamitin po nating makabuluhan, gawin nating makabuluhan ang pagkakataong ito at gamitin natin ang bawat anyo ng karunungan mula rito upang palawakin pa ang pag-unawa ng mga teorya at praktika ng pagkatuto at pag-aaral. Maraming salamat and more power to NTC. Happy 92nd anniversary. Happy World Teachers Day.
Thank you very much, Sir Ed, for that wonderful message. Indeed, this is a very momentous event for the National Teachers College. So let's proceed to part 1, which is the Adaptive and the Resilient Education Award, wherein we will witness the entries coming from our very own teachers. So let's move on to the first plenary session. And we are going to ask the question, where are we in education? To be our moderator for this plenary session, let me call on Professor Judel Roman. Good morning, Sir Judel.
Good morning once again. Welcome back to NINGAS, the NTC Research Congress 2020. Today we'll be talking about evidence-based research on resilient education, and our theme, researching in times of disruption, the same issues from different lenses. My name is Judel Roman. I am the program head for the General Education Programs at the National Teachers College, and I'll welcome you to our very first virtual plenary session for this morning. Our topic for this morning's event would be, where are we in education? And this will be taken from a research perspective. Friends, allow me to introduce to you our first speaker for the whole day and our speaker for this morning's event. Please welcome Dr. Daisy H. Estrada. She is the Dean of the School of Business at the National Teachers College. Dr. Estrada?
Enormous sacrifices to send their children to school. It is at this juncture that we will take a look into the question, where are we in education? A research perspective. So let me start by defining what education is. Ano nga ba ang edukasyon? Sabi ng enormous sacrifices to send their children to school. It is at this juncture that we will take a look into the question, where are we in education? A research perspective. So let me start by defining what education is. Ano nga ba ang edukasyon? Sabi ng Wikipedia, education is the process of facilitating learning or the acquisition of knowledge, skills, values, beliefs, and habits. Educational methods includes teaching, training, storytelling, discussion, and directed research. Education frequently takes place under the guidance of educators or teachers like us. However, learners can also educate themselves. Kaya meron tayong sinasabing individual learning. Okay? So education can take place in formal or informal settings. And any experience that has formative effect on the way one thinks, feels, or acts may be considered educational. Okay? So, yan yung definition ng edukasyon. Pero ito yung pinaka-catchy doon sa meron tayo eh. Okay? Yung education for all. Okay? In 2015, the education for all, or we call it EFA or EFA, included provisions to ensure all Filipinos are able to achieve what UNESCO calls functional literacy. Sabi natin, ano nga ba ang functional literacy? Functional literacy basically pertains to the ability to read, write, and do basic calculations. The government set 4 key objectives for the EFA. Okay? Yung una, providing education options for all out-of-school young people or adults, eliminating dropouts and repetition during the first 3 years of school, encouraging the completion of a full cycle of basic schooling to a satisfactory level at every grade by all Filipino children, and committing to the attainment of basic education competencies for everyone. To fulfill a child's right to quality and inclusive lifelong learning, UNICEF works with the Philippine government and partners to ensure that children are ready for school and schools are ready for children. Our aim is to increase access to formal and non-formal learning opportunities for children and adolescents by strengthening the government capacity to improve the quality and relevance of teaching and the learning environment. If you would look into the 4th slide, the Philippine education in a closer perspective, ano bang meron? Okay? In the Philippine education system, it basically has evolved over 100 years of colonial occupation. Nagsimula sa Kastila, sa panahon ng mga Amerikano, nagkaroon ng revolusyon and all. Okay? The education sector's development has mirrored the changes in the country's administration. Today, the focus is on expanding access and ensuring more Filipinos receive a decent basic education as a means of reducing poverty and improving national competitiveness. The World Bank notes that in other countries, such initiatives have brought large economic benefits. The Philippines has embarked on educational reforms. Alam naman natin yan. May mga ilang pagbabagong isinasagawa ang gobyerno, and it considers crucial to its economic development, bringing its school system in line with international standards and seeking to open up its higher education sector to more people while supporting research and development that will raise its academic profile and bring lasting benefits to the country. Sabi nga natin, mas maraming mga teachers natin na nagre-research, mas maraming magagandang research tayong napapublish, all the more that we could support a better and quality education. Okay? However, sustained funding to support the increased demand on resources will be crucial if these bold reforms are to be a success. Okay? So we need funding. Okay? That's the current. Okay? But let's move into the basic statistics in Philippine education. So, we have 4 indicators to look into para masabi nga natin we have good education in the Philippines. One is completion rate. Second, dropout rate. Third, teacher-student ratio. At yung pang-apat, yung achievement rate. Okay? So if we look into the completion rate for basic education, it's 62.20%. But as to higher education, 58.22%. There's a decline. What about as to dropout rate? So in basic education, we have 8.90%. In higher education, 14.30%. Noteworthy to worthy to note that majority of the students are dropping out during their college years. What about as to teacher-student ratio? Sa basic education, meron tayong 1:41. Okay? Sa higher ed, 1:36. Okay? What about as to achievement rate? So sa basic education, meron tayong 73.21%. And to higher education, 94.76%. Okay? Maybe it has something to do with recent educational reforms that we sought to boost enrollment levels, okay? Graduation rates, and mean years of schooling in elementary and secondary education to improve the quality of higher education, okay? So many of these reforms were adopted against a backdrop of declining educational standards in the Philippine education system during the first decade of the first century. Sabi nga, a UNESCO mid-decade assessment report of Southeast Asian education systems published in 2018 found that completion and achievement rates in education in the Philippines had fallen dramatically, which as discussed is owed to chronic underfunding, as stated a while ago. Also by mid-decade, elementary school dropout rates has regressed to levels last seen in the late 1990s. The completion rate in elementary school was estimated to be below 70%. Kaya nga meron tayong completion rate sa basic education na 62.20% at sa higher education na 58.22%. Overall, the Philippines has suffered a setback in most education outcome indicators. Although signs of recovery have been registered by some indicators, national targets for EFA or Education for All indicators will still be missed. If we look into the next slide, despite being a middle-income country with sufficient resources to support children's education, many Filipinos miss out on opportunities to learn. The number of children accessing education, the quality of education they receive, and the condition of their learning environment are causes for concern. Sabi nga dito, only half of children 3 to 4 years old are enrolled in daycare and only 78% complete basic education. Many schools do not have toilets and clean water. The number of children out of school has reached 4 million. Because of low investment over the past decade, outdated teaching methods and limited attention to the development of children's social and emotional skills, Filipino children lag behind. This situation is worse for vulnerable children, including indigenous children and children living with disabilities. Many schools, particularly in urban areas, have insufficient and poor quality facilities and a shortage of teachers. This is based on the World Bank's report. Sabi pa nga, operational funding shows short of the amounts that schools need to pay bills, undertake basic repairs, and provide the day-to-day materials their students need. Hindi nakakapagtakang makita natin ang maraming eskwelahan na sira-sira at kulang ang kagamitan. And there is rarely anything left to fund school-level initiatives to improve student learning achievement. Medyo hindi maganda yung kalagayan ng edukasyon at this point in time. Now, let's move into the assessments that we have. So, we would look into the bullets. The first bullet would say disparities in access to education in favor of rich, urban, and high income. Achievement rates are low. Dropout rates are high in rural and less developed communities. Science and technology is inadequate. Values education in school are ineffective. Teachers are inadequately trained. Poor teaching conditions and inefficiency in teaching. Much of the official discussions on education centers on the need to raise standards, improve teacher quality, and encourage completion of basic teachings. The dropout rate has remained high, and data from the Functional Literacy Education and Mass Media Survey produced by the Philippine Statistics Authority shows that around 4 million children and young people were out of school, while as of April 2016, 16.6 million Filipinos, or 39% of the workforce, had not completed basic education. The World Bank also noted that continuing problems with access and inequality is basically very evident. The report found that only 53% of the poorest 20% of households sent their children to high school, while 81% of the wealthiest families did so. It only proved the first bullet that there is indeed disparity in access to education. These are alarming data even prior to the pandemic. The challenge in education intensifies due to COVID-19. Now, moving into the next discussion, we have these emergent lessons learned. Education is key for generations for Filipinos to become full-fledged productive members of the society. This is why we should be looking at how the nation should progress in the massive shift in education approaches. The education system must be appropriate to the needs of the country, including its economy. The aim is to improve students' abilities in science and technology and nurture critical thinking, creativity, and entrepreneurial spirit, as well as to encourage them to support the wider community, especially those on the margins. If I would be reading one by one the emergence lessons learned, it would say that UNICEF advocates for greater investment in the country's cognitive capital with skilled teachers, engaging educational materials, basic toilets, clean water, and hygiene facilities. Children can acquire knowledge and socio-emotional skills they need to thrive. The Philippines has embarked on educational reforms that it considers crucial to its economic development, bridging its school system into education sector to more people while supporting research and development that will raise its academic profile and improve the quality of education. And the last one, continuity of learning. The well-established blended learning program enabled children and youth to continue their education despite the pandemic. So let me end my narrative by sharing this adage. It is in teaching that we touch the future. That's why education is the foundation upon which we build our future. Magandang umaga.
Good morning once again. Welcome back to NINGAS, the NTC Research Congress 2020. Today we'll be talking about evidence-based research on resilient education, and our theme, researching in times of disruption, the same issues from different lenses. My name is. Thank you very much, Dr. Estrada, for giving us those insights on where we are in terms of research. I hope you who are watching this live stream on Facebook are able to gain new perspectives and insights on how we can continue on in spite of and despite the circumstances we're facing. Right now, I'd like to introduce to you the very first research that we will be talking about. It's entitled Transition from Tradition, and this talks about how the graduate faculty of the graduate program of the School of Teacher Education did its transition from the traditional face-to-face learning into distance learning. The title really is Transition from Tradition, a documentation of the NTC GSOTE faculty transition into distance learning. This study was conducted by Dr. Dennis Caballes, Dr. Maria Elisa Cruz, and Dr. Esmeralda Mostao. Friends, please welcome the main authors of this research, and I hope you enjoy as well as learn new things from their research.
Good morning, everyone. Transition from Tradition, a documentation of the National Teachers College Graduate School of Teacher Education, faculty transition into distance learning. Authors are Dr. Maria Elisa Cruz of the National Teachers College Graduate School of Teacher Education and San Beda University, Dr. Dennis Caballes of the National Teachers College Graduate School of Teacher Education and De La Salle College of St. Benil, and yours truly, Dr. Esmeralda Mastao of the National Teachers College Graduate School of Teacher Education and the Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila. In-person teaching was unexpectedly halted due to the quarantine period brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. Graduate School of Teacher Education faculty must recalibrate and migrate to an accelerated online learning system to effectively transition to the new normal in education. This research is intended to provide documentation of the experiences of the graduate faculty during the transition from tradition to the new normal. Alongside various prestigious colleges and universities in the country, the graduate school of this institution has started to strategically adapt and implement blended learning upon the initiative of the Academic Affairs Office since last academic year. And from there, transition from tradition, a documentation of the National Teachers College Graduate School of Teacher Education faculty transition into distance learning. With the continuing rise of the infection in the early 2020, education experts worldwide are synced with the realization that if social distancing will continue to be the new normal, then there is a necessity to restructure school systems by going full blast with distance learning. This becomes now the central objective of this research. For the methodological framework, the qualitative narrative inquiry approach was used. A qualitative narrative research aims to explore and conceptualize human experience as it is represented in textual form by Salkind 2010. As used in this investigation, the storied experiences of selected graduate faculty during the transition from face-to-face classes to online teaching were used as basis for identifying key points which were coded and analyzed. Codes eventually led to the creation of themes with which the phenomenon or the totality of the experience was finally extracted from. Such a forced phenomenon served as foothold of the researchers in recommending transition mechanism for distance learning, specifically in the area of learning delivery system. This investigation utilized the qualitative narrative inquiry type of research design. The participants were all faculty members of the Graduate School of Teacher Education We experienced the transition from face-to-face classes to full online classes during the second semester, academic year 2019-2020. Online classes may have involved both synchronous and asynchronous modalities. Final number of faculty interviewed was determined based on the responses to the letter of requests to participate sent to their emails by the researchers. 8 positively responded, and there were 3 main interview questions aimed towards soliciting their experiences, specifically the challenges they've encountered on the sudden shift of delivery of instruction from face-to-face classes to online or distance classes. Questions were individually emailed to the participants, and the responses were compiled, coded, and analyzed. Proving was then carried out through interviews via online platforms, as in Facebook video call functions and Google Hangouts. Collected results from the interview responses and proving follow-ups were coded and became basis for thematic analysis. To summarize the compiled responses, we have the following results and recommendations during transitional approach. Number one, there is a weak faculty preparation towards transition to online classes. And to remedy this one, institute webinars and repository of learning materials about online teaching and learning that the faculty could access and engage into during their convenient schedules. Number two, diverse online learning platforms may have caused anxiety and confusion to the faculty. For this, we have to introduce a uniform and centralized learning management system for the National Teachers College and arrange orientation for both faculty and students. Number three, student rapport, content mastery, and choice of pedagogy remain as essential tools in learning, regardless of platform. And to address this one, we have to create online student learning quality assurance mechanism. For example, redesigning the syllabi, recalibrate learning assessments and activities, among others. And the last one, we have the faculty and students experienced connectivity issues at some points during the transition. For this, promote asynchronous learning delivery by designing offline e-workbooks or modules for specific courses to limit online connectivity usage. Technological literacy is good, but it must be coupled still with content mastery and good pedagogy. While technology can help teachers facilitate effectively the teaching and learning process, it cannot replace teachers in the classroom. Looking forward to the smooth transitions to the new normal in education, National Teachers College, through this initiative, begins to embark purposeful teaching and learning capacity building program that will enable all faculty members to facilitate classes in both blended and full online modes. With the COVID-19 threat still looming worldwide, competence in an online course delivery became a necessity for every educator, especially in an educational institutions for teachers like the National Teachers College. It is therefore imperative that an active and immediate response by the college be done in order to smoothly transition to either blended or full online course deliveries. Thank you and keep safe, everyone.
Wow, thank you very much, Dr. Mostajo, Dr. Cruz, and Dr. Cobales, for giving us your insights on how the graduate faculty transitioned into the distance learning modalities that we are facing right now. Now, for the next research, we now take a look at how distance learning was done in the country and beyond. The next research is entitled Gearing for the New Normal, the Status of Facilitating Distance Learning in the Philippines and Beyond. And this will be brought to you by some of our faculty members from the School of Arts, Sciences, and Technology. These are Brian Kevin Parr, Genevieve Abby Kalimbahin, Hannah Grace Parambita, Gabrielle Ann Munar, and Alvin Glenn Reyes. So to discuss their research, may we now call on the authors of this next research.
Hi everyone, I am Hannah Grace Parambita and I'm going to present the paper of our group with the title Gearing for the New Normal, Status of Facilitating Distance Learning in the Philippines and Beyond. So the abstract of the study leads us to emphasize the importance of having the open and distance learning. For many countries, the number of open and distance learning users is close to 80% of the world's enrolled students and even before the pandemic. So moreover, due to this pandemic, it poses two direct and immediate impacts on children and youth in terms of their education. Number one, there are losses in learning. And number two, there are increased dropout rates. So subsequently, it is widely known that most countries have very unequal education systems, and these negative impacts will be felt disproportionately by poor children. So this study leads us to the question, what kind of teacher one should be under the new normal? And this also leads us to answer, the teacher under the new normal must be a connectivist teacher. This is where the theory of connectivism comes in, with the theory of principles of equivalency in mind and in heart. Schwarm and Warner even argued that if teachers will apply connectivism in their learning strategies, the open educational resources will serve as the contents in the pipeline of learning, in which the creation of pipeline will be the job of the learners. More than 50% of the learners are independent learners, followed by 30% of the students who rely on face-to-face type of education, and 15% traditional educators. But the practice of open and distance learning can't be applied in all countries, as most other provisions in education generally evolves with the increasing sophistication of learning technologies. While text material, traditionally the backbone of most open universities, continues to play an important role, the use of print technology for conveying the text is gradually being replaced by other technologies. Of course, here in the Philippines, being the third world country, with the use of application of technology and networks here, there are also factors to consider, especially to students who aren't ready yet to embrace the technological change in the field of education. There are some students who can't afford to have internet access because of their location, and also due to the fact that their financial capacity won't let them to have such gadgets. This study took its foundational concept from educational theorists' principles in distance education, specifically from Michael Simonson's theory of equivalency and connectivism by George Siemens. This is intended to ensure that distance education does not become an inferior form of education, and in fact may not even be a distinct field of education. So the statement of our problem: in order for learners and learning to successfully cross over to the other side of normalcy, or the new normal we are having in, it matters how the education system will bring them there. This study hoped to contribute to the growing body of knowledge with regards distance and alternative modes of learning brought about by the pandemic. So this study used the mixed method triangulation research design. This is being used by a researcher if he or she wants to validate or expand quantitative data with a qualitative data. This is where the researchers collected and analyzed quantitative and qualitative data and merged the two data into one overall interpretation, in which the quantitative results were related to the qualitative findings. This study used quantitative and qualitative interpretation of secondary data, primarily due to the following factors. Firstly, the study is done during the implementation of the Enhanced Community Quarantine, or the ECQ, and then the Modified Enhanced Community Quarantine, or the MECQ, in Metro Manila. So more so, the topic that was chosen by the researchers hinges on enormous data sets with greater sampling sets that better represent the answers needed of this study. So the author of the secondary data research in this study investigated the status of open distance and e-learning within and among the ASEAN countries, including locally initiated policies and efforts. So for the quantitative data set, the researchers used the survey in floor study. It was an online survey answered by respondents coming from all 10 Asian countries in the month of October 2015. So among those 10 countries that participated with 1,007 participants, the Philippines has the most number of respondents with 39% rate, to be followed by Singapore with 14% participation and Malaysia with 11%. Okay, for the graph 2, we have the perception survey asked the local respondents the following questions. So are you familiar with open distance and e-learning programs? Are there open and distance e-learning programs offered in your country? Do you believe open and distance e-learning programs should be offered in your country? And have you participated in any open and distance e-learning programs offered in your country? And if given the opportunity, would you participate in an open and distance e-learning program at the bachelor's, master's, or doctoral level offered in your country? Graph 2 shows the local responses to the perception survey. So as you can see here, 95.23%, okay, has answered mostly yes, that believe that open and distance e-learning programs should be offered to their country. Graph 3 showed responses to the perception survey, all right, that participated about opening, usefulness, and integration of this open and distance e-learning program of 93.65% to those who agreed to the usefulness of ASEAN open and distance education or e-learning program. So the qualitative analysis of this data shows that there is a need, okay, there is a need to gather different responses or different perspectives from a variety of nationalities within these ASEAN countries. The aim of achieving equal opportunities for all. Students should not have the mindset of thinking that having this kind of learning is merely more on deadlines. So here are the quality areas in open and distance learning that we have to consider. We have to consider the content, the delivery, the pedagogy, and the assessment when it comes to students' learning. For the content, open and distance e-learning programs should have its quality in curricula and has a clear distinction with distance learning and other related programs. For the delivery, quality of alternatives and choices of the learners must be delivered properly. That's why we have different modalities. They can have distance learning through correspondence modules or through modified online. Pedagogy, openness is important in maintaining quality and in open and distance e-learning. And assessment, we can have multiple assessments that can be applied in this program. So in conclusion, it would be best to look into these gaps and limitations that hinder in promoting and using open and distance e-learning in the country. The researchers do recommend that higher education institutions as well as the basic education department would innovate on making open and distance e-learning within the reach of the country's learners. One of the best things about life is that we never have to stop learning. In order for us to live to the fullest, we must continually look for the ways to improve. Thank you so much for listening.
Good morning once again. I hope that you are really gaining many meaningful insights based on the research topics that have been shared and presented so far. like myself, if you are enjoying and appreciating this feed on Facebook, why don't you invite others to join in, watch the feed, share the feed, host a watch party, inform your friends about NINGAS that's going on right now, and tell your colleagues how education can continue in our new normal and how research is showing us how we can cope with this. You know, reading and listening to the presenter so far, the question that comes to mind is this: where were you in March? Or rather, more significantly, how did you cope with the events that began as early as March? Let's face it, the onslaught of the quarantine and the so-called lockdowns all around the country caught us flat-footed. We didn't expect that. It came as a surprise, and many institutions had to adjust very quickly to adapt to this. Institutions like government, like businesses, and most especially institutions like schools. We were not exempted from this. Now, our two research presentations so far, they had a common theme. That theme of how schools were able to transition quickly from the regular way of conducting classes inside the classroom, face to face, to that of doing things remotely and in a distance mode. One main difference, though, is that one research focused on the graduate faculty, particularly that of the National Teachers College, and this was really quite new to the faculty members involved, simply because it required a drastic shift in the way classes were being conducted. The study showed us a little bit more insight into the comfort level of the faculty, into their own little ways and insights of how they did that transition. The graduate school of, or rather the graduate program of the School of Teacher Education at NTC, specifically the faculty members of this institution, had to shift to online teaching to complete the remaining sessions of the term in March. The research that we saw together provided a documentation of these experiences through what they called a qualitative narrative inquiry approach. So they documented all of these things, and we saw many insights, many different facets, different areas. We saw how the faculty did that transition from in different areas. They had to revisit the curriculum. They had to create what was known as an accelerated online learning. This was done through different cycles during the summer, and this helped a lot of our graduate students in adapting themselves, adapting to this as students as well. Okay. So what the researchers told us, that this could be the foothold, of NTC's transition to the new normal, especially considering education. And this is some of the things that have been rolled out based on the feedback and based on what we've been seeing so far. And in the next research, we looked at how countries in the region also did the same thing. It allowed us to look at the perspective not only in our country, but also in the nations that comprise what we call the ASEAN region, the Southeast Asian region. This time, what the authors did, or what the researchers did, was a mixed method triangulation, which looked at secondary data and allowed us to look at what nations are doing, specifically select higher education institutions that are now using open and distance learning, or what some people call ODEL. This method is now being integrated into higher education institutions around the region, and as well as residential institutions starting now. Again, a common theme emerges. The theme of how educational institutions were able to adapt when this pandemic brought everything to a standstill. A standstill, really. The things that we used to do were changed dramatically, were changed very drastically. So the study also showed us that ODEL, open and distance learning education, specifically quality areas where this is being implemented, this should be upheld in order to provide more equitable access and awareness to all the stakeholders. Right now, I suppose you as a teacher, you as a student, you're experiencing this, and you're experiencing how that changes in open and distance learning has impacted you. As such, we are now brought back to where we are now. We are brought back to facing the realities that we are seeing right now. Economies that have slowed down, movements that have been restricted, normal ways of life that have been put on hold. Right now, our undas, the traditional November 1 visits to the dearly departed, have been put on hold. We still don't know what Christmas will look like. And very recent news has told us that even the President of the United States and the First Lady of the United States has not been exempted from this virus. And just fresh news, the traditional traslación, or the January 6 feast of the Black Nazarene, Pista ng Quiapo, has also been changed. The Yorme has already given announcements relative to this, and that is in January. However, and this is a big light, a very, very positive thing that we can look forward to. Education still continues. Learning still goes on. Teachers have shown that they are really resilient, that they are adaptive and innovative. That's one good thing that we as teachers can be proud of. We can choose to continue in spite of our circumstances. And that is what Tanglao, that is what NTC is all about. That continuity of education. And that is why we are using this forum as part of NTC's 92nd founding anniversary. And that is also why we celebrate World Teachers Day, World Teachers Month. This is our way of saluting teachers everywhere. Teachers who continue every day despite the challenges. Teachers who strive to keep the flame of education going. Teachers who strive to keep the light of knowledge burning, so that every student will still have that opportunity to learn. And so, that brings us to the conclusion of this particular segment of NINGAS. Please do join us with more segments that highlight resilient education in this pandemic. Once again, my name is Judel A. Roman. I'm the General Education Program Head of NTC. Signing off momentarily. Good morning!
Thank you very much, Sir Judel. And we also thank Dean Daisy and the first two featured researchers. Now we will move to the virtual plenary session number 2, and we will be looking into bridging classrooms into digital platforms. Our moderator for this plenary session is Ms. Chu Soriano. Good morning, Miss Chu.
And we are back to NINGAS, the NTC Research Congress 2020. Evidence-based research on resilient education with the theme Researching in Times of Disruption. Same issues from different lenses. My name is Chu Soriano. I am the program head for secondary education of the School of Teacher Education, and I will be your moderator for today. In the previous session, we have examined the perspective of where we are in education and how we transition from face-to-face learning into distance learning. Now, for this session, we are looking into bridging classrooms into digital platforms. Our speaker for today is the Dean of the School of Arts, Sciences, and Technology. Colleagues, let us all welcome Dr. Mark Anthony Velasco. Dean Mark, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Miss Chu. I think we now have Dean Mark live, and we'll talk to him for a quick time. Dean Mark, good morning.
Hi, BJ. Good morning, and to all our listeners and viewers this morning. Isang mapagpalang pag-recognize, pagkilala sa ating mga guro ngayong World Teachers Day.
Yeah. So for Dean Mark, based on your observations of the first two researches that had been presented, what are some of your thoughts?
Okay. First among the three thoughts that I have so far, number one, we are in a difficult situation, and because we are in a difficult situation, we learn and try to find ways in order for us to cope up, to at least overcome all of these difficulties, or the difficulties brought by this situation where we're in. Especially that our goal, our intention is really to continue education despite the situation that we are in. Number two, the modalities of learning might vary, but again, going back to our goal, we must continue education regardless of what modality that we are using, how accessible our education is. We still need to facilitate learning. And third, among all of those observations that I've been doing, is that it's not easy. We have challenges, we have difficulties of delivering our lessons, our modalities of learning, but still, we are still here, continuing our goal of educating the young. So
Thank you for the three main takeaways that you got from the first two presenters. So now, Dean Mark, I think we're now ready to listen to your plenary talk. Dean Mark, take it away.
Thank you so much, PJ. So, good morning ulit at magandang umaga po ulit sa ating lahat. Ngayong umaga, gusto kong ibahagi sa inyo, I would like to share with you how can we bridge classrooms from the traditional going to the digital platforms. We were caught off guard when the pandemic struck our country and even the world this year. We were all caught off guard because our intention remains the same of facilitating learning among our students. However, how are we going to do that? To what extent can we reach out to our students given that the situation is not the usual normal that we do lessons or delivering lessons? So this morning, allow me to share with you some short but I hope substantial insights of how can we bridge classrooms in the digital platforms. Take note as well that this is not going to be like a temporary issue or like a temporary ways and means to address the problem. It might have an effect, meaning these digital platforms that we are using, that we are employing at this time, might have a repercussion, especially in the future of our education, both from the basic as well as the higher education institutions. All right. Allow me to share this quote with you, or some insights to you. Our goal is to make education accessible. Our goal is to ensure that we offer quality education. But the problem is, how are we going to do this despite a crisis-driven situation, a health emergency context or condition? Uh, where are we going to start? How are we going to do it? How are we going to ensure that our goal is still achieved or met? Okay? Another idea is that the situation or the crisis that we are situated in should not be a hindrance. It should not hinder us from not continuing education, because there are alternative platforms offered to us by technology in order for education to continue, in order for education to be carried out. All right. So given that situation, given this quote, I hope that we can understand better the situation where we are. Schools now are being challenged to utilize, to manage learning through different online platforms. We are forced to. Aside from online learning environment or platforms, we're also driven by offline learning modalities or approaches. So uh, the problem is, how are we going to do that? How are we going to use technology in order for us to deliver, in order to deliver, design, and even evaluate our learning approaches for our students? Okay, so these are some of the ideas or insights that may inform future decisions, or probably decisions at the current times, wherein we need how classes should be taught remotely. We need some insights, we need some lessons, we need some policies, we need some guidelines on how we can reach out into the learning of our students using a remote method or a remote approach. Okay? And take note as well that technology is supposedly a tool, a platform. It should not replace the teacher. It should not replace the individual who is the carrier of knowledge and learning among our students. So given this situation, given this context where we are, how are we going to deal? How are we going to bridge our learning from the traditional face-to-face classroom teaching environment, and now until up to today, or we transition today into a more non-face-to-face using online platforms. So here's the shift. Digital transition is about the people involved, more than just the technology that we are using. Take note that all forms of learning, digitalization of learning, is driven by people. This is not driven by machines. This is not driven by artificial intelligence or even technology per se. So we still put at the center how the teacher as well as the students are interacting with each other. We might only be using technology as a tool, as a platform, but it remains there. What we need to give premium is the transition of the relationship of people, the students and the teachers or the faculty per se. Okay, so that is what it means by transitioning into a digital platform of learning. A successful shift must be inclusive. All our platforms, the platforms that we are using, that we are utilizing, should be inclusive. No one is left behind. No one is sidelined. No one is not given the opportunity to learn. This also entails that learning allows teachers, students, parents, and the community to be more adaptable, to be more flexible in the use of technology, in facilitating learning among students or even among children of parents. So the goal of a successful shift is to be able to ensure that everyone is still learning, regardless of what platform, what modality are we trying to use or employ in our learning process. That is the most important idea in this transition period that we are doing. If you have comments or if you have suggestions or insights, probably you can comment them in the chat box or in the comment box, and then later on we can address them. Okay. Now, what is the future of our digital classrooms? Will the use of digital digital platforms in learning remain to be useful, remain to be important only during the pandemic? My answer is no. There are a lot of institutions that are already utilizing online learning platforms. So this is not the first time that we encounter the use of digital classrooms. In the West, half of the learning schemes among students are happening through digital platforms. So this is already charting the future of learning, not only in the higher education institutions, but also from the basic education condition or context. So how is the future? What is the future of these digital classrooms later on? Number one, let us remember, let us ensure that exemplary instruction remains to be irreplaceable. There are limitations that we encounter with the use of digital classroom. That is why many scholars, many researchers would just simply will just simply treat digital classrooms as a supplement. It is a support to a face-to-face learning environment. Okay, so it cannot replace classrooms. That is for sure. We have tried since 1991. There were already attempts to use digital classrooms to replace classrooms, but or replace traditional classrooms. Unfortunately, this has not been successful so far. What is successful, what has succeeded so far, is the use of digital platforms as a supplement to learning among our students. That's the first future. That is the first reality that the future of digital classrooms is trying to offer us. Second, students and teachers need collaboration in navigating digital content. Take note that in a digital classroom, okay, the student is left on its own. Without the teacher, without the parents factor, the student is left alone. And because of that, there is a need, there is a required idea, or there's a suggestion to navigate this digital content with a good relationship between the teachers and the students. The students should not be left behind. This is what we need to address in the future of digital classrooms. And because we have a thorough experience of how difficult it is for students to undertake online learning, especially that we are not prepared. We are not prepared of a 100% digital classroom. So in the future, if we want to supplement our face-to-face classroom learning, there should be a strong collaboration between the teacher and the students. Third, there should be an effective digital transitions. According to one scholar in the Philippines, if you want digital classrooms or digital learning to be successful in terms of implementation, there should be a very good curriculum planning. There should be a good lesson planning, so that every step, every single of the way that a teacher or a faculty is handling his or her classes should be well determined, well ironed out, in order to accommodate the students' capabilities, the students' skills, as well as the students' intellectual requirements. And lastly, digital transition is a major paradigm shift. When you say it's a major paradigm shift, matagal pa po yung panahon that we can embrace this 101%. So there are still issues that we need to encounter. There are still issues that we need to overcome as we progress in the coming days. That is the issue of transitioning into a digital classroom environment. So it's a big paradigm shift. It is not an easy shift as we move in the future. So I hope this future of education using digital platforms will also be of useful to us. And lastly, I leave my short discussion with a specific idea or a big takeaway from the presentations that will come in a while. How we experiment, test, and record, and even understand our responses to it now, meaning the response to the pandemic, to the response to digital classroom learning, will determine whether or not digitized education develops an opportunity for the future. So there's no guarantee that whatever digital education can bring us in the future, but one thing is for sure: this is the new trend. This is the new mantra of education globally. So with that, I thank you for listening to me, and I highly encourage you to look at the different researches and the different projects conducted related to transitioning classroom learning into digital platforms. PJ?
Thank you very
Andrew?
much, Dean Mark. And I think the challenge of finding the middle ground between using the digital tools and the preparation for teachers seems to be of primary importance based on your plenary talk. So again, thank you, Dean Mark, and we look forward to many more insights coming from you and from our participants as well. So thank you very much. And let
Thank you
us
so much.
now turn back to Miss Chu. Hi, Miss Chu.
Thank you, Dr. Velasco, for that very intuitive discussion on bridging classrooms into digital platforms. I hope everyone watching on Facebook would realize that these digital platforms can be transformed into memorable learning spaces for our students. For our first featured research in this session, it is entitled The Perspective of College Instructors on E-Learning Gamification and Simulation as a New Wave of Learning Methodology. The authors discuss the perspectives of seasoned instructors towards using these tools in teaching. Here to explain further are the authors from the School of Business, Professors Elena Aguila, Lilian Galang, Jose Enrico Soberano, Janine Ezra Sodario, and Ryan Veletario. Thank you.
Good morning, National Teachers College. I'm Ryan Veletario, one of the faculty members from the School of Business under the supervision of Dean Daisy Estrada. And I am honored to present our research paper for today's NTC Research Congress 2020. All right. Our research paper is entitled The Perspective of Seasoned College Instructors on E-Learning Gamification and Simulation as a New Wave of Learning Methodology, a Descriptive Correlational Study. This study would like to understand the perspectives of seasoned tertiary instructors towards gamification and simulation in online education. And we all know that the Philippine education is affected by COVID-19 pandemic. The fatal epidemic disease does not only pose a threat to everyone's health and economy, but also to education sector where million learners from basic to higher education will indefinitely cease their usual learning operations. Seeing that, the current Philippine school system is front to an unusual kind of disruption. Its subservience to the face-to-face delivery platform is now at a toll, compromising access of learners to quality education. Given the mentioned status quo, the integration of online technology and digital tools are being explored as part of the system's effort in addressing the threat in the academic sector. And prior to today's global pandemic, e-learning has always been in the shelf of various learning institutions addressing the barriers of time and place in learning. In fact, the researchers have been using multiple e-learning tools, equipping them in their current teaching and learning efforts. The question on acceptability and efficiency of e-learning shall not be put to argument on this paper. In this study, Researchers already assume that e-learning as a learning tool has already established its value to learners and instructors, and would like to focus on discussing one of its method of delivery, which is gamification and simulation. Given the mentioned research focus, the researchers would like to understand the perception of seasoned tertiary instructors towards this emerging digital innovative teaching. And we actually have four major stages that went through in order to launch and gather data for this research. First, development of qualitative questionnaire, wherein on this phase, we are aligned to achieve two primary research objectives. First, understand the apprehension of seasoned college instructors in order to bridge learning gaps. And second, to equip seasoned college instructors with new digital learning initiative to respond to student the new student learning profiles. Next would be the invite participants online. Third, validate participant answer through individual interview. And lastly is data analysis and interpretation. As to gathering of data, we have the respondents profile, wherein for this study, we have converged on seasoned college instructors 50 years old and above with a minimum of 10 years of teaching experience and who are actively teaching. Research population, there are a total of 10 participants who have voluntarily joined in the study, all of which provided detailed answers and agreed to undergo follow-through interviews and further answer validation. And as to research design, this study used a descriptive research and unstructured one-on-one interview method to understand the perspective of the respondents on a given subject. And prior to the interview, respondents are asked to answer a questionnaire composing of 5 open-ended questions. And as the result, on the first question, in your current state as an undergrad instructor, can e-learning, gamification, and simulation be an effective tool to impart learning? 80% of the participants emphasize that gamification and simulation in online education has a strong ability to engage and encourage active learners. Question number 2, as a learning methodology, what do you think e-learning, gamification, and simulation has that conventional learning and teaching doesn't have, and vice versa? 60% of the respondents believes that the e-learning, gamification, and simulation has the capacity to mirror real-life critical scenarios in an encouraging and fun manner. Can e-learning, gamification, and simulation be the primary teaching and learning driver in imparting education? 60% of the respondents believes that gamification and simulation and online education cannot be the primary teaching and learning driver. Fourth, do you think that e-learning, gamification, and simulation offers more value to learners as opposed to conventional teaching and learning? 80% of respondents recognizes more value of gamification and simulation in online education should it be carried out together with conventional teaching and learning. And last, in your practice as an instructor, what do you think are the potential roadblocks you will go through that will prohibit you to effectively carry out e-learning gamification method? Majority of the respondents see that the absence of resources or the lack of substantial number of developers and channels to make relevant digital tools is a major barrier that can be threatened a successful rollout of gamification and simulation in an online education. Now, given those data, we have discussion as to perspective analysis, wherein it indicates that majority of the participants recognizes the benefits and values of gamification and simulation in a distance learning setting. As to facilitation confidence, despite the lack of available resources to carry out gamification and simulation in the respective subject, respondents are still optimistic that they can effectively incorporate such method in their current teaching engagement. In a recent survey conducted by DepEd, 81% out of 1,821 respondents said that they are somewhat confident to use FLO, or the flexible learning option. And the survey that was done and was accomplished last April 21st, reaching out to a total of 1,821 teacher respondents nationwide. Given the mentioned data, wherein majority of teachers are somewhat confident to use FLO amidst COVID-19 crisis, it can be concluded that teachers are generally open to use gamification and simulation in online education. And lastly, execution challenges. Given that the school's official curriculum is still limited to deliver flexible learning option, faculty's two hands are tied, hindering them to bridge at least a minimum set of competencies to students in a distance learning environment. And there are actually four major challenges that gamification and simulation in online education that needs to be addressed. The first would be resources, wherein no established publishing and distribution channel for educational games that are relevant to online education. Second, institution, wherein the cost of developing a fully game-based course can be prohibitive for some academic institution. Third will be faculty. The cultural barriers remain for some faculty coupled with required multiple competencies, not just content and teaching expertise. And last would be the students. Accessibility, engagement with other students, and the time required for complete different tasks. And as a result, the research shows that it can be concluded that gamification and simulation in online education, as perceived by seasoned instructors, is an effective learning tool that can be maximized if it is executed along with conventional teaching and learning. Furthermore, gamification and simulation in online education is perceived only as a booster for students. Therefore, teachers still need to keep the learning process as real as class-like environment. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear professors, for showing us that e-learning, gamification, and simulation can be a very helpful learning methodology in this new normal. Truly, it was enlightening. Our next featured research is entitled Examining Technological Integration in Delivering Content Modification in the Teaching Learning Process of the New Normal. The year 2020 has been confronted with unsettling challenges, not just for educators, but predominantly for its learners all around the world. The sudden shift from face-to-face classroom-based learning to distance blended learning shaken up schools to its core. Here to explain and give more insights are the authors of the research. They are all teachers from the School of Arts, Sciences, and Technology. Mr. Jeff Beltran, Ms. Jessica Calderon, Mr. Mark James Cayabyab, Ms. Diana Christine Limbo, and Ms. Michelle Cesar. Enjoy.
A blessed and safe afternoon to all. The title of our study is Examining Technological Integration in Delivering Content Modifications in the Teaching Learning Process of the New Normal. Now, why did we conduct this particular study? To support our interest, a recent article by the World Economic Forum suggested three possible ways that this virus could reshape the quality of education. First, we had the public and private partnership, then digital divide, specifically gap in terms of resources, access, and digital immigrants and digital natives, and the continuous development of educational technology. Now we talk about EdTech, or educational technology. This concerns with the appropriate utilization of technology in improving or enhancing the teaching and learning process. And with these reasons that are currently happening as of the moment, we became more interested in conducting this study. Now, what were the methods? To quickly tell you the details, we conducted the study from May 1st to 15th of this year to the School of Art, and then we utilized non-probability convenience sampling in order to select the number of participants from 90 down to 28. Then we utilized an online survey, specifically through Google Forms. So our study is a quantitative descriptive study. In terms of framework, we utilize two frameworks that are appropriate in our research. First, we have the TPAC framework by Kohler and Mishra, wherein it stresses out the importance of the teacher being the subject matter expert, an expert in terms of the appropriate approach for the subject matter and the technological tool, and the the tool expert, so quote unquote, the one who is expert in the technological knowledge for the right approach and the right content. With the current context being considered, the teacher must be in the middle spot, wherein he or she knows every single consideration for technology integration. And second, we have the technology integration matrix, wherein there are 5 characteristics of the learning environment, from active learning to goal-oriented learning. And there are 5 levels of tech integration, ranging from entry level until transformation level. Now, what were the key findings? These are the specific parts of the questionnaire. The first one is under the technology inventory, wherein the top 3 technologies, where they are the laptop, computer, and liquid crystal display projector, or the LCD projector. These are the top 3 tech where the gadgets available and accessible to every student, as well as provided by the institution. When it comes to how frequently the teacher allows the students to use the following technology during the teaching learning process inside the classroom, regularly the teacher uses LCD projectors, PowerPoint presentations, and Microsoft Word. The implications that the students are knowledgeable enough to utilize the following tech for their study, and they find it convenient to use for learning inside and outside the classroom. Next, we have in terms of the in-depth view of tech integration. Now, out of the 28 respondents, 85% 71% answered yes, that they are currently integrating tech in their classroom effectively. When it comes to the gadgets or technological tools that they could not teach without it. They identified laptops, electronic mail, projector, smartphones, Google the search engine, calculator, and of course the internet. What were the factors that preventing them from integrating tech? First is poor connection, which I think is still applicable until this very moment in time. And the second reason is access of the internet for the students. Now, when it comes to the tech integration matrix, the School of Arts, Sciences, and Technology instructors, they know how to direct their students in the conventional and procedural use of tech tools. So 19 out of the 28 respondents, they know how to utilize it. They are under the active and adoption level, the active learning environment. And a good number also, 15 out of 28, School of Arts, Sciences, and Technology instructors, they're in the collaborative level, wherein these instructors have successfully facilitated students in exploring tech tools independently inside the classroom. Now, to conclude, in relation to the TPAC framework, overall, School of Arts, Sciences, and Technology instructors, they know how to appropriately utilize tech in their specific subject areas. In relation to the technology integration matrix, the School of Arts, Sciences, and Technology instructors, they are currently in the adoption and adaptation tech integration level, and it would be better to challenge themselves to aspire and to embark on a major breakthrough to reach the infusion and hopefully the transformation technology integration level. Now, what were the recommendations made? First, to conduct the survey in a much larger population, perhaps the entire faculty members of the NTC, and conduct a similar study this time on students' perception on tech integration in their respective classrooms. And another important recommendation is to conduct a series of webinars and online trainings for the School of Arts, Sciences, and Technology faculty. And as per their recommendation, the faculty members suggested topics about programming bootcamps or conducting programming bootcamps, graphic design, talk about ICT-related skills, so graphic design, and then more trainings and orientations about distance learning and the different tech tools for integration and different learning management systems. And with that, in behalf of my co-researchers, thank you for listening, and please stay safe.
Thank you, dear teachers, for that very insightful discussion. And I hope that teachers and educators watching Facebook Live would really recognize that the mere use of technology is not sufficient. Technology should be interacting with pedagogy and content to really produce a meaningful interaction and learning experience for our students. And I hope that it has been very eye-opening to everyone. For our last featured research, our researchers bravely assess the factors of applicability of video conferencing to NTC college students during this quarantine period. The authors, Mr. Alip Aspiras, Mr. Renz Hector Bonifacio, Ms. Michelle Carpio, Mr. Bernard Evan Hamon, and Mr. Dan Gerard Rubis would now share their research entitled Factors Affecting the Applicability of Video Conferencing Among NTC Students During the Quarantine Period. Enjoy.
Good day, everyone. The title of our research is Factors Affecting the Applicability of Video Conferencing Among NTC College Students During Quarantine Period. The research team is composed of Alip Diaz P. Ras, Renz Hector P. Bonifacio, Michelle C. Carpio, Bernard Evan V. Hammond, Dan Jewart C. Rubis. Video conference calls have increased significantly during the COVID-19 pandemic. This paper assessed the factors affecting the applicability of video conferencing to NTC college students during the quarantine period. Researchers explored the following factors: perceived usefulness, perceived ease of use, behavioral intention to use, problems encountered, and financial capability. With the advent of the information technology, the internet made a significant change to almost all aspects of our lives in terms of communication, news, buying and selling, and in education. Distance learning is a relatively new educational field that focuses on delivering classroom contents and instructions to students who are not physically on site. Instead, teachers and students communicate either asynchronously or using technology that allows them to communicate in real time, synchronously. Using the various technologies available for video conferencing, educators can provide a more interactive distance learning experience by delivering real-time, bidirectional video, voice, and data communications to their distance students rather than just the standard electronic media. Video conferencing is important because it joins people who would not normally be able to form a face-to-face connection. It can increase productivity amongst educators, as well as provide an improved way of communicating and interacting with their students. In this paper, the researchers studied and assessed the factors affecting the applicability of video conferencing among the college students at National Teachers College during Enhanced Community Quarantine, ECQ. It was on March 16, 2020 when ECQ was implemented in Luzon area in response to the growing pandemic of coronavirus disease 2019 in the country. On the 30th of January 2020, the Philippine Department of Health reported the first case of COVID-19 in the country with a 38-year-old female Chinese national. On the 7th of March, the first local transmission of COVID-19 was confirmed. Since then, the number of cases has soared to more than 10,000, amidst lockdown and quarantine measures being implemented by the government. The ECQ greatly affected the educational sector in the country as well. All faculties, staffs, professionals, and administrators of academic institutions were directed to work from home and to observe strict home quarantine. Several academic institutions resorted to online learning or distance learning to continue providing lessons to students while classes remain suspended. Among these institutions is the National Teachers College, wherein it designed an enhanced student academic engagement arrangement to provide maximum flexibility for the students, thus giving everyone the chance to finish his/her academic requirements with ample teacher support and time, and to learn at his/her own pace. Video conferencing is one of the tools utilized by educators in distance learning during the ECQ. Scope and limitation. The study is about the significance of the factors affecting the applicability of video conferencing at National Teachers College during the ECQ.
Thank you, teachers, for that very informative discussion. I hope everyone gained awareness on how we can easily adapt to the 360-degree shift that has shaped the landscape of Thank you, teachers, for that very informative discussion. I hope everyone gained awareness on how we can easily adapt to the 360-degree shift that has shaped the landscape of our education system today. Listening to the insights of the speakers made me realize how fast the world has changed because of this virus, and how schools and institutions were severely affected by this virus. Looking into the three studies presented, we can see that technology played a big role in helping us adapt to the situation. But it also highlighted that we still need more training to do this kind of learning experiences. The first research showed us that we can find a different learning modality to help us teach better online. It is not to fully eradicate conventional teaching mechanisms, but to complement it with the right tools to make learning more experiential and sustainable for our students. The second study showed us how the virus propelled us into a very giant paradigm shift, and how the mere use of technology is not sufficient to help gain a better learning experience for our students. It gave us a new perspective that technology should be interacting well with content and pedagogy to make sure that the experience or the learning experience the students get is very meaningful. The third research showed us or opened us to the dilemmas that our students are facing because of this online learning. It highlighted key issues like students didn't have enough space or the right space for the online learning. They didn't have enough money to buy load for online discussions. But it also showed that video conferencing is a good or a better means of delivering lessons. And that if we can find ways to help our students, they will look at video conferencing as a powerful tool in delivering these lessons. In summary, we cannot allow this pandemic to take away the learning from our students. Parents should not allow this to discontinue learning for their children. It also made me realize that we, as teachers, should strive to find better ways to bring learning into the homes of our students, to really engage the parents, to this collaboration that we need them to help us make sure that learning happens at home. Our main theme for this session was bridging classrooms into digital platforms. We teachers have found ways into making sure that we use the right technology to help our students. And we have already made modifications to content and to the curriculum in order for us to push in the most essential learnings so that our students do not miss out on anything, even if there's no face-to-face education. Looking into a few years back, I never realized or I never thought that education would be fully online this year. It has shocked everyone. It required huge adjustments from every student, teacher, administrator, and even the government to make sure that education never stops. And one final note, technology, when used properly and utilized fully, can be a powerful tool in making sure that the learning experiences of our students is very sustainable and achievable in every way, even during pandemic. I'd like to thank everyone for joining our session this morning. And I hope that everyone gained valuable insights to bridging classrooms into digital platforms. And I hope that we'll see you in this afternoon session of NINGAS, the NTC Research Congress 2020. See you.
Thank you very much, Miss Chu, for the wonderful synthesis regarding the second plenary session. I think our participants gained a lot, especially on understanding the importance of these digital tools and how we can do our best to make sure that these tools are effectively used for the teaching learning process. So at this point, we're now on the last virtual plenary session, and that plenary session will be moderated by Professor Dagame Bohol, who is the program head for the graduate program. And the plenary session number 3 is about feedback and assessment. Good morning. Good afternoon, Professor Bohol. How are you today? Professor Bohol? Sir Bohol, can you hear us? Sir, can you turn? Yeah, that's good to see. Magandang tanghali, sir. Yes. So now, Professor Bohol will introduce to us our third plenary speaker. Go ahead, Professor Bohol.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am very honored to introduce our third plenary speaker for our Research Congress today. Our speaker will share his expertise in giving feedback and assessments in the role these two concepts play in a learner-centered e-learning environment. So properly offered feedback in an e-learning course will make the learner feel motivated and feel inspired. So let's learn together at some ways to give feedback and assessments in an e-learning environment. Without further waiting, let me call on the Dean for School of Teachers Education, Dr. Ferdinand Pitagan. Good afternoon, Dean Ferds.
Good day, everyone. My name is Ferdinand B. Pitagan. I'm the Dean of the School of Teacher Education at the National Teachers College. Once again, we would like to express our deepest gratitude for everyone for taking time to attend our NINGAS NTC Research Congress 2020. For my talk for today, I will be talking about feedback and assessment and how you could put it as your research agenda and objective, and how it would inform now on how we would continue education during this pandemic and even after the pandemic. During this pandemic, UNESCO has estimated that 177 countries, at present, there are 185 countries who have discontinued education because of the pandemic. In the Philippines alone, 28 million estimated learners are affected by it. Today, Monday, we are welcoming once again the comeback of our K-12 public school students into our educational system in different modalities. Government across the world has put forth a global response on how to continue education during this pandemic. There are global educational coalition, technical assistances, a wealth of webinar on different subjects, as well as knowledge sharing workshop, issue notes, and the digital learning resources, as some of our private school institutions have already accumulated of. There are also national learning platforms like our DepEd Commons and the CHED Open and Educational Resources, as well as surveys on how we would continue education in learning, teaching, research, and services, and partnership across national and international institutions and organizations, as well as evolving and emerging policies, adaptive policies on the efforts to initiate and scale up responses of school closures, building of successes on UNESCO organization, as well as global monitoring of countrywide and localized school closure. In the Philippines, DepEd has come up with an algorithm of learning delivery modalities, one of which would be the face-to-face learning modality. If we would be allowed by the government, we would go back to our brick and mortar school, provided that there are health and wellness framework that we have to adapt to, such as physical distancing, health and hygiene measures, reduce class size, and reduce class days. But right now, starting today, the DepEd, the Department of Education, has instituted the use of flexible learning approaches. This could be blended learning, which is a combination of face-to-face and computer or technology-mediated learning, which could be delivered synchronously via, an online face-to-face interaction, just like what we're having right now. This could be done real time, or it could be done in asynchronous online learning, which is students are given their corresponding tasks, references, and learning outcome deliveries in which they could work on as an independent, individualized learner, or the use of digital or offline modules to continue their learning. Offline meaning they could get it via email and work on it offline without any internet connection, and then pass it, once they have their connection. All of these options border on open and distance learning approaches. This is the use of technology, which is very prevalent in the Philippine setting. But for those who do not have access to this technology, it could be home-based by the use of television and radio, or the use of print modular. This is also another form of distance learning where students are learning from a distance, mediated by distance, but still they would continue learning. For those who do not have access to this digital technologies, or it could be homeschooling. Homeschooling exists even prior to the pandemic, in which the teacher or the primary facilitator would be the parent inside the school. So whatever modality that school is utilizing during and maybe even after the pandemic, this is a hotbed now for assessment and evaluation. Evaluation and assessment of these processes and of these practices, whether they are really effective and efficient for learning. An empirical question would be, how are these different modalities in terms of assessment and evaluation be effective and efficient in their corresponding target students, not which one is the most effective or the most efficient, because everyone should cater to into different modalities, into different type of students that we have across the Philippines. Also, UNICEF has outlined the research agenda on what are the different areas and variables that should be integrated in the continuation of education. That would be child protection, in which we are estimating the impact of COVID on violence prevalence. This is a rapid research review on pandemics and child protection, as well as in education. Is there an equitable continuation of learning where everyone would be on board, everyone would be inclusive, everyone would be in inclusion on how we continue education, as well as social protection. This is research on social and economic impacts of COVID, lesson on providing assistive technology to those students who are having, disabilities in crisis. This could be a review of emerging evidences on mental health among children and adolescents, and child well-being, where children experiences and responses during the COVID-19. This could be a review on emerging evidences on the social impact on COVID on children, families, and communities. And of course, just like we said, we are now, utilizing a lot of online technologies on how we engage children to education. So children's online engagement during this time, the importance of children's internet access during COVID. And these are some of the practical tips on which hopefully it would guide you on how you would continue your research for evaluation and assessment. This is done by the World Bank group. So this is adapting evaluation designs in times of COVID. This is a 4-question to guide your decision. The first question would be, should you adapt your evaluation questions and scope? Is your target audience likely to listen and act on the findings? If it's yes, are the intervention objective and activities coherent enough to allow for evaluation? And if it's yes again, are you likely to have well-substantiated evaluation findings? And then you should continue. So at the other end of the spectrum is, if your audience would not likely to listen and act on your findings on assessment and evaluation on how educational institutions or even the national government or even the Department of Education is continuing education, you would need to change in order to meet their needs. What would be the corresponding needs of your stakeholders, because they are most likely not to listen to your findings? Could there be a different evaluation angle that will bring more value during this time, that would get them on board on your findings? And what practical and ethical constraints are weighing in your capacity to collect information, and how can you improve it? This is how you would, substantiate your evaluation findings. Another pertinent question would be, how can you improve what remains to be visible? Can you enrich your portfolio analysis with other sources? Your portfolio analysis could be your wealth of data. This could be media artifacts. This could be assessment artifacts. If it's yes, can you strengthen your content analysis with theory and theory-based principles? Remember that research would always be, back up with the review of related literature, which is based on some of the educational theories that we'll be espousing about. And another question would be, would the cost of learning or hiring an expert justify the means? Okay. So, and do you have a signable portfolio to experiment with artificial intelligence? So this artificial intelligence now is in the forefront of educational research because of the big data analysis. How we could, uh, depict all of these corresponding variables that are now come into play on how our children are working, interaction, engagements, even behavior online, even their assessment records, even the time that they log in, even the grouping strategies that they employ among themselves. These are all could be called upon and could be synthesized by the use of artificial intelligence. Another pertinent question would be, can you find ways around what is infeasible? Questions would be, would you be able to interview remotely the right key informants? Would you able to do key informant interview or focus group discussion during this time? Would it be ethical to do so? And if it's ethical, would you be able to work around biases inherent in remote interviewing? Say, for example, access to technology. If it's a focus group discussion, that everyone would have um, uh, the same bandwidth, thereby there could be logs in interviews, there could be, some other technical aspects that would go for it. And then can you tap into the expertise of local researchers, of your expert validators, of your advisors, and can you make them apply ethical consideration when reaching out to others? Even before the pandemic, ethical consideration, in pursuing educational research, especially in assessment and evaluation, and also giving feedback, because we are directly communicating with our students who are more likely in the K to 12 are more likely to be minors, have to be applied. So we have to make sure that you and even your local researchers and even your partners, even during this pandemic, technology-mediated data collection would consider, would perform, would make sure that there are ethical consideration. Okay? And the last question would be, can you tap into alternative sources of evidences? If your portfolio assessment, if your artificial intelligence like data analysis, or some of your interviewer or interview notes are not available, can you tap into different sources of evidences? Are there new sources of new big data available to answer your particular questions, which you now count? There are a lot of available data, especially in education now, that are being harnessed by different sources. It could be academic resources, it could be businesses, it could be marketing strategies. And would you consider that as part of your research? And if so, can you access them? Okay, can you use it ethically again? And at the same time, is it worthwhile investigating resources and expertise to consider big data analysis? At the other end of the spectrum would be, can you consider whether data agreement can reach, access them, and can you follow procedures on data protection and information privacy? As well as you have to think of long-term and considering other options for experimentation. So these are the I think the pertinent questions now that should be incorporated in your research data, especially if you're doing feedback and assessment. There are higher educational institutions, most of them have continued education despite the pandemic. Now the K to 12 is beginning to open up schools. Private schools have already started. Now it's the public school. So I think the pertinent question about how we could do now assessment and feedback is more crucial. And there is really a need for us to do research-based, evidence-based activities and processes in order to inform our decisions. Say, for example, DepEd has come out with an announcement a few weeks ago that they are deleting now the quarterly exams. So the quarterly grade now would be based on written works and performance evaluation or performance activities. So how would that impact learning, and how would that impact again assessment and evaluation during this time and even after this time? To end my talk, during this pandemic and even after, we need novel, rigorous, reliable, and valid research data that would inform, it could be the institutional or the national decision makers, as well as the teachers inside the classroom, teachers like us, professors like us, on the most effective and efficient way how to assess and evaluate learning. So this is a continuously evolving, emerging research agenda that we all should ascribe to as teachers and as researchers. Again, this is Ferdinand B. Pitagan from the National Teachers College, and thank you once again for attending NIGAS 2020. See you soon. Thank you.
Yes, Professor The Game.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Dr. Pitagan, for that meaningful and insightful experiences when it comes to feedbacking and assessment. Assessment exerts a major influence on students' approaches to study in higher education. So it is really important to ensure that it enables students to develop and thrive as learners. The wonderful tips that you have shared with us is truly appreciated, Dean Pitagan. Indeed, feedbacking or effective feedback is really designed to determine a learner's level of understanding and skill development in order to plan the next steps towards achieving the learning intentions or goals. So feedback provides practitioners and learners with evidence about learning, about current knowledge and skills, and also development. Understanding about the learner's progress and level of achievement enables us, teachers or practitioners, to really make decisions about the next steps in the student's learning program. So it enables the learners to reflect on their learning strategies, to confirm them, to make changes or improve the learning process. Thank you again, Dr. Pitagan. At this point, we will now listen to several or three featured groups of researchers to share their outputs with us. Our first group of researchers who will share with us today, their research is entitled The Learning Environment Preferred by Students of NTC School of Business. The authors are Professor Jocelyn Aguas, Dan Lewis, Christian Ardimer, Eddie Bolenadi, Louis P. Pavaver, and Lodeline Guevara. This study explored the preferred learning environment of NTC students in the School of Business. So to share their findings, let us all watch and listen to the group's representative. Thank you.
Good day to each one of you, especially to our keynote speaker, Dr. Ed Vermin, to our plenary speaker for this session, Dr. Ferdinand B. Pitagan, our session moderator, Mr. Dagami Obuhol, and to everyone who are part of NINGAS Research Conference 2020 and the whole of National Teachers College. Today, I will be presenting the learning environment preferred by students of National Teachers College School of Business, authored by Ms. Jocelyn L. Aguas, Mr. Dan Luis Christian D. Ardimer, Dr. Eddie B. Bulanadi, Mr. Louis P. Fabever, and Ms. Lodeline Guevara. So, first we will be talking about how was this research conceptualized. So we all know that online learning or e-learning is just one type of distance learning, the umbrella term for any learning that takes place across distance and not in a traditional classroom. In this time of pandemic, online classes became an option and a platform to continue learning. Flaws on the delivery cannot be denied due to many factors affecting the learner's preference. This prompted the researchers to conduct this study entitled "The Learning Environment Preferred by Students of National Teachers College, School of Business." So now we'll be talking about the problem of this research. Why we made this research? What's the problem behind this one? So, in having an online setup, a professor can choose whatever platform they may deem useful and efficient. But adapting a new learning management system means that National Teachers College will have its own platform to be used exclusively on the institution's students and teaching personnel. This study will identify the side of the students, and if they are willing to accept this kind of system, that obviously will require an internet connection. And if National Teachers College will decide to establish this system, what will be the possible hindrances of the students may face? So, the main thrust of this study is to determine the learning environment preferred by students of National Teachers College, School of Business. And now, let's go ahead to the notable findings we found on our research based on the data gathered. So, first one is that the respondents tend to prefer classroom setup type environment when it comes to the part when they are asked about what are their preferred setup, assuming if they are enrolled in subjects with laboratory activities such as bread and pastry, accommodations, operations, and the like. It is entirely noticed on the data that 97% preferred to have classroom setup against the 3% who wanted an online setup. One of the considerations of the respondents might be on how will they be able to perform laboratory activities if learning environment will be online. The next notable finding that we found is that the respondents prefer a classroom setup environment, assuming if they are enrolled in subjects without laboratory activities. Respondents who choose to stay in a traditional learning environment are relatively higher than those who want online setup. It might be that this system is new, making them not yet fully ready for a change, and the trust of the students are not yet established when it comes to online setup. Though, this one has a higher response rate about an online environment preference than the first notable finding. It is most likely because having online classes with no laboratory subjects are easier and more accessible than having online classes with laboratory subjects. And then we have here the third notable finding, that the respondents prefer classroom setup environment, assuming they are enrolled in subjects with laboratory activities and without laboratory activities at the same time. And only 8% of the respondents prefer online setup environment. So the final notable finding on this one is that when the respondents were asked if what will be their hindrances assuming the online method will be implemented in terms in attending online classes, such as gadgets, connectivity, and the like. So all the data, we have gathered the three most common hindrances the respondents will be facing if online setup will be implemented. The first one, or the highest one, will be the connectivity problems with 45% of responses, gadget availability with 26% of responses, and both 4% of responses are tied to the environment and time. But talking aside, there are also 6% of responses saying that they will not face any hindrances if online setup will be implemented. So that's all for the notable findings for the research. Now we'll be talking about our conclusion and recommendation. So, based on the findings of the study, the most preferred learning environment is still the traditional or face-to-face classroom setup than the online setup. Several factors influenced the responses, such as lacking or problematic internet connection, availability of gadgets, geographic challenges, and the like are the reasons why the majority of the respondents likes to stay in the traditional setup. Even though, with a very low percentage of responses who prefers online setup, it is still a positive note that there are few who are ready to adapt to the new normal. This will, however, take a lot of convincing coming from the institution and support from its stakeholders. Accessible, low cost, and packed lessons online, such as online laboratory, online demonstration, easily accessed, noticeable, free guidance counseling, low tuition fee, engaging activities through explanations and interesting lectures offering online would help in drawing attention to students that online setup is as good as traditional classroom setup. If these actions will be taken into consideration, we can definitely see an increase in the percentage of respondents that prefers online setup of education and adapting to the new normal. Thank you. So here is our image references for all the images we used during this presentation. Thank you again and have a great day. Bye for now.
Sir, the game. Sir?
To learn more skills. So while learners can learn in an array of settings, it is important that we are ready to adjust to whatever platform or modalities that we will be choosing. Thank you, Professor, for sharing. Second, our second featured research for this afternoon entitled Student Satisfaction Towards Online Learning. The research presenters are Professors Darwin Polo, Professor Carlo Ernesto Jimeno, Professor Yolanda F. Manahan, Professor Jacqueline C. Serrano, and Professor Rogelio Valdesco Jr. Their study explored the level of student satisfaction as to teacher interaction in an online engagements, enhance sustained academic engagements, arrangements, and students' attitude. So let us all listen now to the researchers' representative for their outputs.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jacqueline Cicerano from and I am here to present to you our study entitled Student Satisfaction Towards Online Learning. My co-researchers here are Professor Darwin O. Fulio, Professor Carlo Ernesto A. Jimeno, Professor Yolanda F. Manahan, and Professor Rogelio M. Valdesco, Jr. This study was conducted last second semester of academic year 2019-2020. Out of 1,517 students enrolled from the School of Business, we were able to survey 415 students. The participants are the Bachelor of Science in Accountancy, the Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, and the Bachelor of Science in Office Administration students. We were able to focus on this research because of the coronavirus disease 2019. This pandemic drives school to drastic change from active face-to-face classroom setup to online learning medium. Yes, it was indeed an abrupt shift in the medium of teaching, but it is a forceful reality that such flurry of chaos in internet connection is now an instant normal to all education sector of the society. In fact, online learning is a key tool for students during this current world health issue. Researchers are now studying different areas of the now online education era to understand its development, effect, or impact to the students in the midst of COVID-19 scenario. As part of such understanding is this research, with the goal of examining student satisfaction towards online learning in the National Teachers College School of Business. We were able to come up with the three indicators of student satisfaction. First, the teacher interaction in online engagement. The second one is the enhanced sustained academic engagement arrangement. And the third indicator is the student attitude towards online learning. The following are the statement of the problem. What is the level of student satisfaction towards teacher interaction? Second, what is the level of student satisfaction in terms of the enhanced sustained academic engagement arrangement? And the third one, what is the level of satisfaction in terms of student attitude? So we were able to use the following methods of study. The qualitative method was used in this study to describe the student satisfaction towards the three indicators as teacher satisfaction on online engagement, the enhanced sustained academic engagement arrangement, and the student attitude towards online learning. We also use survey questionnaire. A survey questionnaire is a research instrument consisting of a series of questions for the purpose of gathering information from respondents. The researchers prepared a 15-item survey questionnaire clustered into three categories, such as student satisfaction on teachers' engagement, on online learning, the Enhanced Sustained Academic Engagement Arrangement or the ESEA, and the third one is the student attitude towards online learning. Likewise, a 4-Likert scale survey questionnaire to require a specific answer. We also use percentage, which is the ratio or proportion of any number in 100, the weighted mean. The researcher used this to calculate the varying degrees of importance of the number in a data set and to get the average responses on this study. The standard deviation. The researcher utilized standard deviation to tell how measurements for a group are spread out from the average or expected value. A low standard deviation means that the most of the number are close to the average, and a high number standard deviation means that the number are more spread out. Likewise, standard deviation used to identify the consistency of the responses on this study. So let us now present the tables. The first table that I am presenting to you are the respondents profile. As you can notice, the BSOA students get the highest frequency of 151 and a percentage of 36.39. The BSA students have a high frequency of 119 and a percentage of 28.67. The BSBA students got 145 with a frequency of 34 with a percentage of 34.94. The total number of students are 415. These are the profile of the respondents. So the highest frequency goes to the first year students with 196 and a percentage of 47.23. And the lowest frequency goes to the fifth year students of BSA, which have 3 and a percentage of 0.72. So this is the third table, the level of student satisfaction towards teacher interaction. Indicator number 1, my teacher responds quickly to the messages I send, garnered the highest weighted mean of 3.14, with a verbal interpretation of agree and a standard deviation of 0.67. Indicator number 4, my teacher provides supplemental supporting academic resources. And number 5, my teacher exudes the air of openness should we have questions, get an equal and second to the highest mean of 3.08, with verbal interpretation of agree. They differ, however, on the standard deviation where the indicator number 4 has 0.71, while number 5 has 0.66. Meanwhile, indicators number 2 and 3 have equal and lowest weighted mean of 3.06 with verbal interpretation of agree. However, their standard deviation varies as number 2 got 0.78 while number 3 got 0.65. The 5 indicators acquired a grand weighted mean of 3.13 with a verbal interpretation of agree. Effective instructor-student communication in online learning environment relies on timely and clear interaction through a variety of formats, including email, chats, live, class questions, and assessments, and feedback provision. In the absence of more immediate feedback methods available to on-campus instructors, examples are face-to-face consultation, the assessments and feedback provided in online learning environments needs to be as clear and valuable as possible to promote student understanding. Teacher supports online involves effective monitoring of students' progress, anticipation and resolution of key learning queries, and establishments and maintenance of rapport. Collectively, these kinds of competencies shape the effectiveness of online instructors and, in turn, the student experience. While these elements are well established as effective practice in online classes, there exists significantly more pressure on these factors when content, delivery, assessment, feedback, and communications occur within a condensed of 6-week time frame. Effective online instructors have a different and important role in influencing the student experience, since instructors are often the face of an online course. Prior students have emphasized instructors' presence as among the most critical of factors related to student success online. In the absence of this richness of interactions available to on-campus students, instructors become an even more important ingredient in helping to engage, retain, and online students. Instructors also play a key role in motivating students throughout their online study. Since instructors may commonly be the only personalized point of contact provided to students at any time, instructors' responsiveness and availability have been highlighted as a key predictor of online student satisfaction. In the lack of timely feedback or slow communication timeframes from instructors detract from student satisfaction online. It is apparent that development of instructor training is a critical component of effective institutional preparation for wholly online courses so that teachers can develop the range of skills required to teach online effectively. For table number 4, which is the level of student satisfaction towards the enhanced sustained academic engagement arrangement, or the ISEA, Table 4 shows that indicator number 3, wherein the student finds the instructions in ISEA easy to follow with a weighted mean of 2.73 and a verbal interpretation of agree and a standard deviation of 0.70. On the other hand, indicator must Number 4, wherein learnings from ISEA are applicable in real life, and indicator number 5, wherein ISEA broadens my capability to learn more equally, have a mean of 2.51 and a verbal interpretation of agree and a standard deviation of 0.79 and 0.82. It means that the respondents find the essaya very instructive because they can do their work easily. Instructions are easy to understand and follow. They can also apply what they have learned using essaya in their real-life scenario. According to the message of our President, Mr. Alfredo Ayala, and NTC President, that NTC shall first and foremost continue its commitment to accessible quality education. Despite the many challenges now posed by COVID-19, NTC will preserve its mission to enable access to success. The goal is to help students be the best versions of themselves possible, while considering that each student agree that they are satisfied with teacher interaction with 3.13 weighted mean. What is the level of satisfaction towards essaya? Students agree that they are satisfied with essaya with 2.63 weighted mean. What is the level of satisfaction towards students' attitude on online class? Students disagree that they are satisfied on online classes with 2.37 weighted mean. For our conclusion, School of Business students are generally satisfied with the level of interaction of their professors who provided feedback in a timely and fair manner. School of Business students are somehow satisfied when NTC's sustained academic engagement arrangement, mainly due to the ease of the modality resulting to the realization of its objectives. SOB students have negative attitude towards online learning. Data revealed evidence of students not being ready for an online learning environment, which they find inconvenient due to the impersonal nature of the setup. For our recommendation, the group recommended the following. Present and explain to the students on the set of online learning engagement that is easy to understand rubrics or criteria in grading student output. A collaboration with students on how outputs are graded would be very helpful in achieving an air of fairness and clarity in grading. While theoretical learning can expand students' knowledge, students may have a hard time applying theories into real-life scenarios. Hence, delivery of online learning should achieve applicability to real life instead of purely theoretical. A visual and text-based delivery can be helpful in accomplishing this task, which may reinforce students' capability to learn more. Many students of School of Business are technologically challenged, and therefore, delivery must take into account students' technological background. NTC may take advantage of social media, usually can be access for cheaper amount courtesy of the Philippine telecommunications companies, promos, in adapting visual and interpersonal communication to improve students' attitude towards online learning. This approach can increase social interaction with the professors and co-students, making their online learning more interactive and fun. As each student is faced with different constraints technologically, alternative ways should be introduced to provide supplemental resources to help achieve each of the online course objectives. Thank you so much for listening.
Okay, Professor The Game.
I hope you were able to
Thank you very much, Professor, for your valuable insights. Indeed, student satisfaction is an important indicator of the quality of learning experiences. Student satisfaction is important in the evaluation of distance learning as it is related to the quality of online learning and students' performance. Interaction is a critical indicator of student satisfaction. The completion of your research is really a good indicator of our goal to continue looking for ways to improve our pedagogies in order to give the best learning opportunities to our students. Again, thank you very much, Professor, for that wonderful sharing. And finally, moving on to our third featured research for this afternoon, the title Effectiveness of Online Platforms as Perceived by Selected Students of the National Teachers College, authors by Professor Rachel Ann Capacite, Professor Marjorie L. Mauricio, and Professor Erlinda Socorro M. Ponce, Professor Ibel S. Ramos, and Professor Marcelo P. Villaluna Jr. Their study sought to find out if an online learning platforms used are effective to cope with the new normal. Students who responded to the surveys were from a representative samples of the total populations of the school. To share their findings, let us watch and listen to the group's representative.
Sometime in May 2020, this study with the title The Effectiveness of Online Learning Platforms as Perceived by Selected Students of the National Teachers College was conducted by the following faculty members from the School of Business, namely Rachel Ann Capacite, Majorin Mauricio, Erlinda Socorro Ponce, Paul Abel Ramos, and Marcelo Villaluna. The study sought to find out if online learning platforms were used and if they were effective to cope with the new normal. Students who responded to the survey were from only a representative sample of the total population of the school. These student respondents were under the School of Business. The familiarity of the students of the online learning platforms used and if their professors made use of these online learning platforms were tackled. Also, the responses with regards to the effectiveness of Edmodo and Facebook Messenger as learning platforms were assessed, and whether the student respondents were willing to explore other learning platforms was touched on. Alternatives were brought forward in the survey wherein responses were taken note of. In the development of this paper, in the findings and conclusion regarding the platforms used were found to be moderately effective. Recommendations were given to be able to continue with improvements to deliver better learning. In the statement of the problem, the main problem was to determine the effectiveness of online platforms used for student learning at NTC. The sub-problems were the profile of the student respondents, their familiarity to the online platforms used, and whether their instructors used these online learning platforms. Other questions that were answered were the effectiveness of the use of Edmodo, the use of Facebook Messenger, and whether the student respondents were willing to explore on other online learning platforms. Also, were there other online learning platforms that were recommended by the student respondents? Then, the researchers made use of the sampling technique, which resulted to the descriptive method of research. Random sampling was applied related to the number of students who were enrolled in the School of Business. A survey questionnaire was sent online, and the responses were retrieved within 24 hours. The statistical treatment of data as fully described in the study were recorded, interpreted, and translated into the descriptive statistical values such as frequency count, ranking, and computed weighted mean. A scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest and 1 as the lowest with their equivalent statistical units, descriptive, equivalent, and symbols for each were devised. From the gathered data, the following were arrived at from the responses of the students. That 33% came from the BS Hospitality Management program of the School of Business. That 74% were in the second year level. That majority were females. That 99% were familiar with the online learning platform stated. That 97% were engaged in the online learning platform as used by their instructors. That in the effectiveness of Edmodo as a learning platform was interpreted and described as moderately effective. That the effectiveness of the Facebook Messenger was interpreted and described as moderately effective. That 63% were not willing to use or explore other learning platforms. And that 84% like to engage in the Google Classroom as another online learning platform. So therefore, the findings concluded that majority of the respondents were from the BS Hospitality Management Program. The effectiveness of Edmodo as an online learning platform was described as moderately effective. The effectiveness of the Facebook Messenger was described as moderately effective. And the effectiveness of online learning platforms as perceived by the selected students of National Teachers College was described as moderately effective. It is therefore recommended that professors should consider Google Classroom as online learning platform to facilitate learning instruction. Since 63% of the respondents were not willing to use or explore other online learning platforms, it is recommended that professors or teachers should find other ways to facilitate learning sessions. To accelerate learning, it is recommended to set a common goal with a common tool for classes. Another is to engage the students with the content of the lessons, maybe through paired sharing, through a synchronous offline manner. Understanding the lessons is another matter. It is recommended to reinforce by reteaching the synchronous way. Now, these are practiced at NTC. Lastly, future researchers may conduct a similar study and can make use of this as secondary data. At this point, it may be safe to say that this study may have helped the school decide in what manner classes can be conducted the semester after the study was made. Thank you.
transition from where we are in education to digital tools and all the other concerns of our teachers and students in the National Teachers College, specifically when we had our ESEA, okay, which is the Enhanced Student Engagement, okay? And I think we were able to hear a lot from our researchers from graduate school and college. So I hope we had a lot of learning and we were able to pick up several of them. So perhaps we can go first to our Facebook chat in order to check. Okay, we would like to acknowledge all those who are watching us right now. So we have Dr. Fe Hidalgo. We have teachers from School of Business, Ma'am Carpio. We have Sir Dennis San Gregorio of School of Teacher Education. We have Sir Dan Rubis is also watching. We have our grad school students watching. And we all are very thankful for your participation. We also see that Ma'am Lilian Galang is also watching our Facebook Live. And we would also like to acknowledge our high school teachers who are now currently watching our Facebook Live. And again, in the spirit of the World Teachers Day, this is a very opportune time for us to listen, share best practices. Okay? I also like to acknowledge Dr. Dennis Caballes, one of our researchers, for presenting the first paper earlier. And we look forward to the results in a little while. Okay, so I think we're now ready to announce our winners. So are we all excited? Okay. If we are all excited, please cheer for your groups. Okay? Okay? I think, shout out to Ma'am Jocelyn Aguas and the teachers of SOB. And also, happy World Teachers Day to Ma'am Ruth Balagat from the School of Teacher Education. And of course, we would like to greet our program head for Hospitality Management and Tourism Management, Professor Ray Yanga. We greet him a happy birthday. Okay? So, I think we're now ready to announce our top 3. Okay? So, this is so exciting. By the way, we will take a break in a little while before we move on to the students and the teachers ongoing and completed research. I think we now have Dr. Fermin on the call. Dr. Fermin? Hi, sir. Dr. Fermin? Yes, sir. We're done with the 8 research presentations, and I think, sir, you have the honor to announce who are the winners of this year's area awards. Sir Ed?
That's right, PJ. Before I announce the winners, I'd like to once again congratulate the team who have put together all our events and initiatives towards our research, especially during this time. I'd like to once again congratulate Professor Rona Federizo for chairing the Committee for Adaptive and Resilience Education Awards, with the assistance of the Office of the Dean of the School of Teacher Education, Dr. Ferdinand Pitagan, the Dean of the School of Arts, Sciences, and Technology, uh, uh, Dean Mark, and our Dean of the School of Business, Dean Daisy. Thank you so much all for ensuring that our faculty teams are represented in this noteworthy endeavor. And of course, we also like to congratulate Sir PJ Blando for ensuring the smooth flow of our um, presentations this morning. So for the announcement of winners, I'd like to be clear that our finalists will be receiving 10,000 per group. The third place winner will get 15,000 pesos. The second place winner will get 20,000 pesos. And the first place winner will get 25,000 pesos. In addition, all submitted entries will be published in a special edition of the NTC Faculty Research Journal. So all the entries submitted this time will definitely form part of the special edition of our journal. And we hope that in the next rounds, we will have more entries coming from our faculty. So I think we're all excited to know who our top 3 winners are. So I'd like to begin by announcing the third place winners. The third place winner of this round of the Adaptive and Resilient Education Awards are the authors from the School of Arts, Sciences, and Technology, Jessica Calderon Ayabyab, Diana Christine Limbo, and Michelle R. Season for their research entitled Examining Technological Integration in Delivering Content Modifications in the Teaching Learning Process of the New Normal. Congratulations to the team of SOAS. We now move on to the second place. Meantime, let me announce the second place winner. And I know that our awardees or our audience are guessing which school did this second place winners come from. But I'd like to let you know that the second place winners are coming from still the School of Arts, Sciences, and Technology, Brian Kevin Parr, Genevieve Abby Kalimbahin, Hannah Grace Parambita, Gabriel Ann Munar, and Alvin Glenn S. Reyes for their research entitled Gearing for the New Normal, Status of Facilitating Distance Learning in the Philippines and Beyond. Congratulations to the second team of the School of Arts, Sciences, and Technology. And I think we're ready to, and we are excited to know because out of the 8 entries, there are still 6 finalists to choose from, and it has been a difficult work for our external panel of reviewees to select our most outstanding research in adaptive and resilient education. But for this round, the first place goes to the team from the School of Teacher Education, Dr. Dennis Caballes, Dr. Maria Elisa Cruz, and Dr. Esmeralda Mostajo, with a research entitled Transition from Tradition, a documentation of the NTC's researcher faculty transition into distance learning. Congratulations to all our winners and finalists, and we hope to receive more entries at our next call for research projects. Back to you, Sir PJ.
Thank you very much, Sir Ed. We would like to congratulate all our winners. And we are so happy for you because you were able to really share the best practices in terms of education resiliency at the time of disruption. So with that, we would like to congratulate also our finalists because they made it this far. Okay, so please take note, we're done with part 1 of our research congress. And we will resume after 1 hour. So we will take an hour's break in order to prepare for the second part, which would be the students and the faculty's completed and ongoing research. So stay tuned and see you after 1 hour. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for watching.